Tonight, we drift back through the fog of centuries into an age of torchlit halls, quiet monasteries, and old-world forests where healers and wanderers searched for ways to soothe weary minds after long days of labor. Our story begins with a single question whispered through the cold stone corridors of history. What did it feel like to seek comfort, calm, or escape in the medieval world? Before we begin this slow, lantern-lit journey, if you're watching from the US, Europe, Canada, or anywhere else around the world, let me know what time it is for you in the comments. And if you enjoy peaceful, atmospheric tales like this one, feel free to like and subscribe so you never miss another nighttime story. Now, settle in, adjust your pillows, take a slow breath, let the outside world grow a little softer, and follow me across the threshold of the past. The evening settled over the medieval village like a wool blanket placed gently across tired shoulders. Smoke curled from thatched rooftops, drifting up toward a dusky sky where the first stars trembled awake. Chickens rustled into their coops, gates were barred, and the distant lowing of cattle faded into the quiet hum of night. Down a narrow dirt path lined with herbal gardens, an elderly healer named Marwan lit a small beeswax candle. Its golden glow spilled across the bundles of dried plants hanging from the rafters. Lavender tied in soft violet loops, mugwort leaves crisp with silver edges, chamomile flowers preserved at the height of their summer bloom. These were not luxuries, nor tools of thrill-seeking, merely the humble comforts people clung to in an age when life was demanding from sunrise to sundown. Marwan moved slowly, her joints stiff from decades of walking between cottages. She hummed a tune older than memory as she inspected each herb. In medieval times, people didn't speak of getting high the way the modern world does. Instead, they sought gentle calm, a momentary easing of the weight of work, grief, or worry through the plants the earth offered them. She set a clay bowl on the table and began crushing a mix of lavender and sweet woodruff. Their scents rose like soft ribbons, twining together in the warm air of the cottage. Outside, a breeze brushed through the trees, making them whisper against each other like quiet storytellers sharing old secrets. A young traveler named Edrin stepped inside, shaking the chill from his cloak. His expression held the fatigue of many miles walked, many roads crossed. Marwan lifted her eyes toward him with kindness. "You look as though the day followed you all the way here," she said, her voice like old parchments, soft, worn, warm. Edrin managed a tired smile. "I hoped you might have something comforting. Not to dull the mind, only to loosen its knots." Marwan nodded. "The world knots itself enough," she replied. "Sit, rest. Let the herbs speak in their own slow way." The candle flickered. Outside, the village slipped deeper into night, leaving only the faint glow of hearths scattered like tiny stars across the hillside. Inside the cottage, the story quietly began. The wooden door closed gently behind Edrin, shutting out the wind's restless sigh and wrapping the small cottage in a cocoon of warmth. The candle's light pulsed softly, like a slow heartbeat, casting gentle halos across the wooden beams overhead. Shadows drifted lazily along the walls, rising and falling with the flame's quiet movements, as if the room itself were breathing in a slow, steady rhythm. Marwan eased herself onto a low stool beside the hearth. The fire burned low and steady, its embers glowing the deep orange of sun-warmed clay. A pot of water simmered there, sending up faint curls of steam that smelled faintly of mint and earth. She lifted the lid, allowing more warmth to spill into the air before gesturing for Edrin to sit upon the cushioned bench opposite her. He settled down, shoulders sinking as if the bench had gently pulled the weight from his spine. For the first time in days, he noticed how tired he truly was, not only in his legs, but somewhere behind his eyes, in the soft and quiet spaces of his mind, where worry tended to settle. Marwan reached for a small wooden box. Its surface was smooth with age, edges worn by decades of hands opening and closing it. When she lifted the lid, soft fragrances drifted out, dried petals, crushed leaves, small curled roots with earthy scents. She handled each ingredient with the slow respect of someone who believed that plants held stories of their own. "You know," she said, selecting a pinch of chamomile and letting it fall like pale gold into a clay cup. "In these lands, people have long searched for comfort at the end of a difficult day, but they sought it gently, through warmth, through company, through the earth's calmer gifts." She paused, her eyes moving to Idrin's tired expression. "Relief was never meant to lift you away from yourself, only to help you breathe a little more easily." Idrin nodded slowly. "The road has a way of rubbing the mind thin," he admitted. "Sometimes I forget what calm even feels like." Marwan smiled, faint and kind. "Then tonight," she said, "we remind you," she added, "sweet woodruff, the leaves folding softly as they touched the warm air, releasing a scent like dried hay after a long summer's day." Into the cup she also placed crushed lavender, its purple flecks catching the candlelight like tiny sparks. As the herbs mingled, Idrin closed his eyes for a moment, not from sleep, not yet, but from the simple comfort of being somewhere safe, somewhere quiet, somewhere where the only expectation was to rest. Marwan poured hot water into the cup, and the herbs blossomed within it, turning the water a soft golden hue. Steam wafted upward, carrying with it the fragrance of fields, forests, and sunlit meadows. She slid the cup toward him. "This isn't meant to change the world," she murmured, "only to soften its rough edges." Idrin wrapped his hands around the warm clay. The heat seeped into his palms, gentle and steady, like a friend placing their hands over his. Outside, the night deepened, the wind quieted, a distant owl called from the woods, and inside the cottage, just for a while, peace began to unfold like a slow, warm tide. The cup trembled faintly in Idrin's hands as he lifted it, not from fear or cold, but from the slow release of tension unwinding from his muscles. The steam drifted upward in loose curling ribbons, carrying gentle notes of meadow air and late summer warmth. He breathed it in first, just a quiet inhalation, and the scent seemed to settle somewhere deep within him, smoothing the frayed edges of thought. The first sip was mild, warm, and soothing, the flavor more like a memory than a taste. It reminded him of a hillside he once rested on in childhood, where wildflowers bowed to the wind and the sky felt impossibly wide. The softness of the herbs wasn't startling or strong, just a gentle reminder that comfort could still be found in small, humble things. Across from him, Marwan watched with the patient silence of someone who had spent a lifetime tending to weary travelers. She didn't rush him, didn't instruct. She simply observed, letting the cottage's quiet do its work. The fire's glow shifted, deepening into a gentle red that flickered across the floorboards in slow waves. The walls, hung with bundles of herbs, swayed slightly in the faint movement of air, like dozens of tiny pendulums marking time at a calmer pace. "You've walked far," Marwan said softly, after a long and peaceful pause. "Your steps carry more than your pack. They carry the stories you've lived, and the ones you haven't yet found room to set down." Idrin lowered the cup, the warmth lingering in his chest. "Some nights," he admitted, "it feels as if the past follows me, step for step, each memory like a shadow on the road." Marwan nodded knowingly. In these old lands, people once believed that shadows grew heavier with unspoken worries. that the mind needed moments like this, warm light, a safe room, something simple and calming to let its shadows rest beside it, instead of behind. She leaned toward the hearth and added a small log. It settled into place with a soft thud, releasing a comforting crackle. The sound filled the room like a lullaby of embers. Edrin took another slow sip. His breathing deepened, his shoulders lowered, inch by inch, as though gravity had gentled rather than pressed upon him. Marwen continued, her voice like the hush of a turning page. Herbal comforts in medieval times were never meant to dazzle or make the world spin. They were quiet companions, helpers to guide the mind into evening's softer spaces. A moment's stillness, so a weary traveler could face tomorrow. Edrin closed his eyes, letting the warmth of the cup rest against his palms. Outside, a soft rain had begun to fall, its patter like a long, steady whisper against the roof. The sound blended with the fire's murmur, creating a cocoon of gentle rhythms. For the first time in many days, Edrin felt himself drifting into an easier state, not away from reality, but closer to peace. Marwen rose slowly and placed a wool blanket around his shoulders, her movements deliberate, quiet, almost ceremonial. "Let the night soften you," she said. "There is much more to tell, but it begins with rest." The candle continued its slow, golden flicker. The rain deepened its gentle song, and the cottage felt like an island of calm in a world of restless roads. The rain settled into a steady, rhythmic patter, the kind that softened the world rather than obscured it. Each drop tapped gently against the cottage roof, forming a delicate woven sound, like thousands of tiny fingertips brushing lightly across stretched hide. It filled the space between breaths, between thoughts, until even Edrin's heartbeat seemed to move in time with the falling rain. Marwen returned to her stool, her old bones moving in slow arcs that matched the mood of the night. She drew her shawl closer around her shoulders, its woven threads patterned with symbols from a time when healers were as much storytellers as they were caretakers. The shawl settled softly, like a patch of twilight wrapped around her. She watched Edrin absorb the warmth of the drink, the blanket, the fire, and when the moment felt right, like a candle flame leaning just slightly toward a whisper, she began to speak again. "Long before I was born," she said, her voice low and steady, "this village sat at the very edge of a great forest. People called it the Green Quiet, for inside it, the world hushed itself. Even the birds sang more softly there, as though respecting something ancient." Edrin opened his eyes, slow and languid. "The Green Quiet," he repeated. The name itself seemed calming, like a thought wrapped in moss. Marwen nodded. The healers who lived near that forest learned to notice what the earth offered, not as an escape, but as a companion. They watched how certain herbs calmed a restless night, how others soothed anxious hearts. They listened, not with ears alone, but with patience. The fire popped softly, sending up a spark that drifted like a tiny firefly before fading. One healer, she continued, was known for her ability to ease troubled minds. She never promised to lift someone out of their life, only to guide them to a gentler place where they could breathe, think, and perhaps see their burden differently. Some said her mixtures felt like sitting beside a quiet stream, not dazzling, not strange, just steady and comforting. Edrin sipped again, letting the warmth spread outward like ripples in a pond. "Did you learn from her?" he asked. Marwen smiled, a thin crescent of nostalgia. "Not directly, but her teachings lingered like the scent of rosemary in an empty room, passed down through hands and voices. The heart of it was simple. In a harsh world, moments of calm were sacred." She reached up and adjusted a strand of lavender hanging overhead. Its purple petals rustled softly, releasing a touch more fragrance into the air. There were others, she went on, who misunderstood, who believed the earth's gifts could lift them beyond worry altogether. But even then, the wise would say, the mind must meet the night on its own feet. Comfort was a guide, not a door. The rain deepened slightly, as if agreeing. Edrin let the images settle the forest, the quiet healers, the gentle mixtures, made not to overwhelm, but to soothe. In a world where life was often loud with hardship, the idea of peace arriving in small, steady doses felt strangely powerful. He leaned back, letting the blanket nestle around him. His eyelids grew heavy, not with sleep alone, but with the sense of safety found only in warm rooms and kind company. Marwen folded her hands in her lap. "When you've rested enough," she said softly, "there is more to share. The night is long, and stories move best at the pace of calm." The cottage glowed with emberlight. The rain whispered, and the night held them both gently. The rain softened again, settling into a gentle hush that wrapped itself around the cottage like a thick quilt. Edrin shifted slightly beneath the wool blanket, the fibers warm against his skin, carrying the faint scent of lanolin and sun from some long-past summer day when the sheep had grazed freely on hillside meadows. Every sensory detail in the room seemed designed by the night itself to guide him toward calm. Marwen leaned forward to stir the embers with an iron poker. She moved slowly, with the reverence of someone tending not just a fire, but a living companion. Sparks drifted up, glowing briefly before vanishing into the dim air. The flames brightened, casting warm amber across the walls, illuminating rows of herb bundles, carved wooden bowls, and the small clay jars whose contents held decades of knowledge. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't empty. It was the kind that stretched softly between two people who understood the quiet language of rest. Eventually, Marwen exhaled, slow and steady, and began again. "You know," she murmured, "when people of old sought gentle comfort, they often looked toward the green quiet. They believed the forest breathed differently than the rest of the world, deeper, slower, as if each tree carried centuries of calm waiting to be borrowed." Edrin listened, eyes half-lidded. The warmth of the tea still hummed through him, grounding rather than lifting, steady rather than swirling. Marwen's voice felt like an extension of the fire's glow, soft, rhythmic, unhurried. "There was a path," she continued, brushing her thumb over the wooden handle of the poker, "a narrow trail woven between oak roots and mossy stones. Travelers walked it not to chase strange sensations or lose themselves, but to remember something quieter, to be reminded that the world was vast, yes, but also gentle. In the places where one paused long enough to notice, the rain's rhythm tapped lightly against the windowsill, forming its own soft accompaniment to her tale. Herbs gathered from that path," Marwen said, "were used with great care, not to change a person, but to ease the burdens they carried. A few leaves to soften the mind, a blossom or two to steady the heart. These comforts helped people navigate their thoughts like a lantern guides a traveler through fog, never illuminating everything at once, but offering enough light to move forward." Edrin breathed in slowly, letting the mix of lavender and fire-warm air settle deeper into his senses. His shoulders felt looser now, no longer hunched with tension from the long road. Marwen watched him with a thoughtful expression, her eyes reflecting the shifting glow of the embers. "In those times," she said softly, "the greatest healers believed that peace was not something you reached suddenly. It arrived little by little, like dew forming on grass at dawn, a small comfort, a quiet moment, a breath you didn't realize you were holding finally released." Edrin nodded, his head gently dipping. "It feels like that now," he whispered. Marwen's smile was tender, Good. Rest is meant to come softly, not as a wave that sweeps you away, but as a tide that rises around you with patience. The fire crackled, the rain whispered, the herbs swayed faintly overhead, like nature's own wind chimes. In that little cottage, the centuries grew thin, and the ancient wisdom of the green quiet breathed through the air, steady and slow. The fire's glow softened, settling into a slow pulse that mingled warmly with the steady rhythm of the rain. Edrin let his gaze drift toward the small cottage window, where droplets collected and slid down the glass in languid trails. Each drop caught a glimmer of firelight, turning into tiny molten streaks that vanished into the dark beyond. Marwen rose with deliberate quiet, her shawl trailing like a shadow made of dusk. She took a small lantern from a hook near the door, its metal frame worn smooth by countless nights, and set it on the table between them. With a spark from the fire, she lit the wick. The lantern's light blossomed gently, as though waking from sleep, casting a warm halo that mingled with the candle's glow. Edrin watched, his mind drifting like a leaf in calm water. "This lantern," Marwen said, brushing dust from its handle, "once belonged to the healer who walked the green quiet. She carried it on nights when someone in the village needed not just herbs, but presence, a companion to walk with them through anxious thoughts." Edrin's eyes followed the way the lantern's light flickered across Marwen's face. It made the fine wrinkles around her eyes appear softer, like lines etched by years of compassion rather than time. She believed, Marwen continued, that comfort wasn't in the leaves she gathered, but in the way she walked beside people, never rushing them, never pulling them forward, just offering steadiness in a world that often felt unsteady. The wind shifted outside, brushing faintly against the door. The cottage walls groaned softly, the sound deep and earthy, like an old tree adjusting its weight. Edrin leaned back, drawing the blanket closer. "I think I understand," he murmured. "It isn't about forgetting the world. It's about easing enough to see it clearly." Marwen nodded. "Exactly. The herbal mixtures used in medieval times were never meant to send the mind spinning into strange realms. They were meant to be like this lantern." She tapped it gently, a small light, nothing more, enough to guide one careful step at a time. She paused, letting the lantern's glow fill the silence. "Some nights," she added, "the healer would take a villager into the forest, not deep, just far enough for the sounds of the trees to remind them of a truth the world often made them forget. That calm still existed. That nature moved slowly, no matter how quickly worries grew." Edrin imagined the scene, a narrow path beneath towering oaks, the lantern casting a golden circle around their feet, the forest breathing in slow, deep murmurs. The thought alone eased him further, like cool mist settling over warm skin. "Tell me," Edrin whispered, "did those who walked the forest path feel changed?" Marwen smiled thoughtfully. "Not changed," she said, "aligned, as though something inside them, long bent by fear or exhaustion, straightened just enough to breathe." She leaned forward, pouring the last of the warm water over a new bundle of calming herbs, wild thyme, meadowmint, and a single sprig of lavender. Steam curled upward again, soft and welcoming. Edrin breathed in the fresh wave of scent, letting it drift through him like a peaceful tide. "Tonight," Marwen whispered, "you walk a similar path, not with your feet, but with your thoughts. And just like those travelers, you are not alone in it." The lantern glowed. The rain hushed itself to a soft drizzle, and the night deepened around them with gentle patience, waiting for the story to continue. The lantern's glow shimmered softly, its light steady and warm as it cast gentle, wavering crescents across the cottage walls. Edrin watched the flame dance behind the glass, the tiny motion soothing in its simplicity. Outside, the rain had eased into a soft drizzle, each drop tapping lightly, almost thoughtfully, against the earth. It was the kind of weather that made the world feel wrapped in wool and quiet. Marwen settled back onto her stool, the wooden legs creaking in a familiar, friendly way. She folded her hands in her lap and let her gaze drift toward the herbs swaying above them. For a long moment, she simply breathed, the slow inhale and exhale syncing naturally with the rhythm of the cottage, the fire, the rain, the lantern's gentle flicker. When the healer walked the green quiet, she began, her voice low and calm. She often said that the forest mirrored the traveler. Those who entered anxious found the rustle of leaves soothing. Those who came burdened found the vastness of the trees reassuring. And those who felt lost found comfort in the narrow, guiding path beneath their feet. Edrin closed his eyes halfway, letting the words paint images in his mind. He imagined moonlight dripping through branches, the sound of soft soil underfoot, and the lantern's glow leading the way like a patient companion. The forest of Marwen's story didn't feel frightening or wild. It felt ancient, steady, and deeply kind. She once walked with a young shepherd, Marwen continued, a boy weighed down not by danger, but by simple worries, the kind that sit quietly on the heart until they feel heavier than they should. He feared he wasn't enough for the life ahead of him, feared he would fail those who depended on him. The fire popped gently, sending a soft glow across the floorboards. The healer brought him beneath the oaks, she said. She let him breathe the cool night air, let him hear the distant stream, let him notice how even the tallest trees swayed with uncertainty, yet still stood. Edrin opened his eyes at that, his voice a quiet murmur. And did it help him? Marwen nodded slowly, not in a sudden rush, but little by little. He found that when he returned from the forest, the world felt less sharp. His thoughts no longer pressed against him like heavy stones. The calm didn't erase his challenges, it simply reminded him that he could meet them with steadier steps. She reached for the clay cup and poured him another measure of warm herbal infusion. The steam rose in graceful spirals, carrying the sense of thyme and lavender into the air. Edrin accepted it with a grateful dip of his head, the cup's warmth seeping instantly into his palms. You carry a similar weight, Marwen observed, her tone gentle, not probing. Miles walked, tasks waiting, memories lingering. These herbs won't lift them from you, but they may soften the grip they have on your spirit. Edrin took a sip. The warmth spread through him, not sharply, but like a blanket being laid across his heart. The heat touched the edges of old worries, smoothing their roughness just enough that he could breathe around them. The green quiet was never about escape, Marwen whispered. It was about remembering the stillness that lives beneath all things, beneath noise, beneath worry, beneath the busy tangle of life. Even now, even here, that stillness waits for you. The lantern hummed softly. The rain slowed to a tender drizzle, and Edrin felt himself sinking deeper into calm, as though his thoughts were slipping gently into soft moss. The cottage seemed to breathe with them, its wooden beams settling in slow, familiar whispers. The lantern's glow remained steady, washing the room in a warm, honeyed light that softened every edge. Shadows moved gently along the walls, stretching and curling like quiet thoughts finding room to settle. Edrin rested the cup against his knee, feeling its gentle warmth seep into him. His eyelids fluttered halfway, not from exhaustion alone, but from the ease that had begun to unfurl through him like a slow-growing vine. Every sound, the whisper of steam, the faint crackle of the hearth, the rain brushing the eaves, seemed to blend into one soft tapestry of calm. Marwen watched him with a knowing softness. Her voice, when she spoke, felt like a low stream winding through a quiet valley. In the green quiet, she said, travelers often paused at a clearing of soft earth, a place where the ground dipped gently as if shaped by countless footsteps. They believed that those who came before had left their calm behind, not in the soil itself, but in the memory of the land. She closed her eyes briefly, recalling it. A circle of moss, cool and thick underfoot, ferns nodding at the edges, and above, a web of branches carrying moonlight in small silver pools. Idrun imagined it easily. The mental picture felt like stepping into a dream one had once forgotten but longed to return to. He felt his breath deepen, slow and steady, matching the pace of Marwen's words. The healer would guide each traveler to that clearing. She continued. Some sat in silence, others spoke of their worries. Some cried softly, letting the forest take the weight for a little while, and all of them left standing straighter, as if the ground itself had steadied them. The rain softened further, turning into a delicate mist that brushed gently against the window, more a sigh than a sound. Marwen reached for a small bowl carved from pale wood. Inside lay a mixture of dried leaves and petals, muted in color but rich in calm fragrance. She lifted a pinch and dropped it into a small clay dish near the fire. A faint smoke rose, curling upward like a wandering ribbon. The scent that followed was mellow and earthy, reminiscent of damp soil after morning rain. It's sweet flag and meadow mint, she explained quietly. Herbs the healer often brought back from the clearing. Their fragrance reminds the mind of the steadiness found in places where the earth holds its own peace. Edrin inhaled, the scent grounding him further. His shoulders loosened. The weight at the base of his neck felt lighter, as though the tight knots of travel had begun to gently unwind. The forest taught a simple truth, Marwen said. The mind is not meant to speed endlessly. Even in the old days, with no machines or rushing crowds, people found ways to slow the world inside them. Through scent, through presence, through earth. She placed a hand lightly on the table, fingers brushing the wooden grain. Each traveler who visited the clearing discovered what you are discovering now. Comfort does not whisk you away. It brings you closer to breath, to stillness, to yourself. Idrun let the words settle around him. For the first time in many nights, his thoughts moved gently, as though cushioned by the quiet. The fire glowed in steady waves, the lantern flickered softly, and the calming scent of herbs curled through the room, weaving peace through every breath. The lantern's glow shimmered upon the wooden table, casting warm golden halos that pulsed gently with each flicker of the wick. Edrin watched the light as though it were a small sun rising and falling in slow, peaceful breaths. Every movement in the room carried a softness that seemed crafted for rest. The muted sigh of the fire, the whisper of rain settling into the grass, the faint rustle of herbs swaying above them in the draught. Marwen leaned back, hands folded calmly in her lap, her shawl draped around her like twilight, gathering the evening's hush upon her shoulders. She looked at Edrin, not with scrutiny, but with the quiet attentiveness one gives to a weary traveler, finally finding space to soften. "Tell me," she said, her voice low and even, "how heavy does your journey feel tonight?" Idrun took a slow breath. He felt the warmth of the herbal drink still nestled in his chest, steady as an ember tucked beneath ash. "Less than before," he murmured. "It's strange. I didn't realize how much tension I was holding until it began to loosen." Marwen nodded with a calm, knowing smile. That is often how worry settles, not loudly, not suddenly, but little by little, until the body forgets what ease feels like. She lifted a small clay jar from the shelf, its lid etched with simple spirals. When she opened it, a faint aroma drifted out, cool, refreshing, like morning air rolling over moss-covered stones. She set it near the lantern, allowing the gentle scent to blend with the warm air of the cottage. "In the old days," she said, This mixture was kept for travelers who carried invisible burdens. It didn't bring distraction or wildness. It simply reminded them that the mind could rest, that peace was something they were allowed to return to. Edrin inhaled, noticing the subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. The new scent mingled with the earlier herbs, creating layers of calm that wrapped around him like soft wool. His shoulders eased again. His breaths deepened, no longer sharp or shallow, but smooth as water traveling down a quiet stream. People often imagined comfort in medieval times as something dramatic, Marwan went on. But the truth was gentler. It lived in small things, a warm drink, a healing scent, the steady presence of someone who listened. She placed a hand over her heart. Comfort was never a flight from the world. It was a grounding, a way to return. The rain outside softened to the faintest of taps, almost like fingers brushing lightly against the roof. The fire shifted, its embers glowing deep and steady, casting warmth that flowed into every corner of the room. Edrin felt a gentle heaviness in his limbs, not fatigue, but a long-needed release, the kind that settled only when the body realized it was finally safe enough to let go. Marwen noticed, and her gaze warmed. "You see," she whispered, "the weight you carried hasn't vanished. It has simply found a softer place to rest for the night. That is all these herbs, these scents, these stories have ever been meant to do." Edrin nodded slowly, feeling the truth in her words. Yes, the world hadn't changed, but his place within it felt quieter, more balanced, more aligned with the steady pulse of evening. The lantern glowed like a patient companion. The cottage breathed in slow, peaceful rhythms, and Edrin felt himself sinking deeper into the gentle calm that had been waiting for him all along. A hush settled over the village path as the sun finally slipped behind the hills, leaving a trail of rose gold fading into blue dusk. The young traveler moved slowly, lanterns swinging gently at their side, following the soft crunch of the mossy trail toward the small hut of the herb keeper, a quiet figure known less for magic and more for deep knowledge of plants, teas, and calming remedies that soothed weary minds after long days. Inside the hut, the air was warm and fragrant. Bundles of lavender and chamomile hung from the rafters, their scents drifting like soft ribbons through the shadows. The herb keeper, wrapped in a wool cloak the color of deep forest, tended patiently to a simmering pot over the hearth. Nothing about the space felt dangerous or strange. Instead, it felt like entering the safest corner of the world, a place where the worries of medieval life could melt away beside the crackle of the fire. The herb keeper motioned for the traveler to sit on a low wooden stool. The thick wooden walls held the warmth well, breathing out a comforting heat that reached the traveler's tired bones. On the table lay several small pouches made of linen, each filled with dried leaves gathered from hills and meadows earlier in the season. These weren't forbidden substances or intoxicants. They were the plants that villagers relied on for rest, comfort, and gentle peace after long, exhausting labor. There were calming teas to ease a tense mind, roots that softened an upset stomach, and flowers that carried simple, pleasant fragrances meant to usher in a restful night. The traveler watched as the herb keeper lifted a handful of petals, pale, soft, and fragrantly them fall slowly into a small clay cup. They floated gently before sinking, releasing their warm, soothing aroma. The moment felt unhurried, as if time itself had decided to move at half its normal pace within these walls. Outside, the wind brushed against the shutters in slow, wandering breaths. The fire crackled again. The herb keeper poured hot water into the cup, and the petals bloomed outward like tiny lanterns stirring awake. The traveler wrapped their hands around the warm cup, feeling tension slip away by degrees as the steam rose, carrying with it the scent of quiet meadows under moonlight. This was not a story of dangerous highs or reckless escapes. Instead, it was the truth of many medieval knightspeople turning to the gentle gifts of the earth to bring calm, warmth, and rest after days filled with work and worry. A cup of fragrant petals, a fire whispering in the hearth, and a moment where the world felt steady again. As the traveler sipped slowly, the herb keeper began to speak in a low, soothing voice, stories of harvest seasons, of safe remedies passed down through generations, of how ordinary people found comfort in the simplest natural things. The lantern light danced on the walls as if listening, adding its small glow to the quiet evening, and for a little while nothing else existed but warmth, scent, and gentle calm. The traveler left the herb keeper's hut with a soft warmth still lingering in their chest, the gentle tea settling like a quiet evening inside them. The village was hushed now, wrapped in the blue-gray shimmer of approaching night. Lanterns flickered in windows, each tiny flame swaying like a heartbeat within the wooden homes scattered across the valley. A thin mist had begun to unwind itself across the meadow paths. It hovered just above the ground, drifting around the traveler's ankles like a curious, friendly creature exploring its world. The earth smelled cool and damp soft soil, crushed grass, and the faint sweetness of distant haylofts settling for the night. Every sound was softened here, as though the mist muffled each footstep, each rustle of leaf, each sigh of the wind. Medieval life was rarely easy, but it had its moments of deep, unhurried peace. This path, for example, worn smooth by countless feet over the years, was where villagers walked at twilight to unwind, letting their minds drift as the world dimmed around them. It wasn't about seeking escape through anything risky or intoxicating. It was about being carried gently by the natural quiet of the landscape itself. The cool air, the rhythmic stride, the muted sky, simple things that eased tired thoughts and soothed even the busiest minds. As the traveler continued, they noticed fireflies blinking awake in the tall grass. Their lights flickered in soft pulses, rising and falling like tiny stars, practicing their glow before joining the sky. The traveler slowed, watching them with calm curiosity. The little lights never hurried. They floated with grace, tracing tranquil patterns that seemed designed to lull the world toward rest. Further down the path, the meadow widened into a small clearing where a wooden bench rested beneath an old oak. Its branches spread outward like an umbrella of shadow and silence. The travelers sat down, letting their shoulders sink into the gentle curve of the bench, the wood cool and familiar beneath their palms. From here, the night unfolded gradually. The sky darkened into a deep, velvety blue. A single star appeared. Then another. Then a small cluster like a handful of crystals scattered into the heavens. The traveler breathed slowly, the calm of the moment filling them from within. A soft breeze drifted through the clearing, carrying the distant scent of fresh herbs from the fields where villagers grew plants for cooking, healing, and comfort. Lavender, mint, wild thyme plants that weren't about altering the mind in risky ways, but instead about supporting rest, soothing aches, and bringing quiet focus at the end of long days. Their fragrances mixed in the air like a gentle lullaby. The traveler closed their eyes for a moment, listening to the world breathe around them. The rustle of grass, the whisper of the wind, the faint chirping of insects tucked beneath leaves. It was peaceful in a way that made time feel round and soft, like a blanket being pulled slowly over the valley. A sense of safety settled over them, subtle, steady, and real. The kind of comfort people in medieval times often sought through simple experiences like this. Walking under the sky, sitting beneath ancient trees, letting nature's quiet rhythm loosen the knots of the day. When the traveler finally opened their eyes, the meadow seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight, as if the earth itself was exhaling a slow, gentle sigh. The traveler rose from the wooden bench beneath the ancient oak, feeling refreshed by the whispering night air. The mist had thinned slightly, revealing more of the meadow's soft curves and gentle swells. Ahead, a cluster of small cottages glowed faintly, their windows lit by warm candles. The lights shimmered like golden seeds scattered lovingly across the darkened valley. Drawn by the gentle glow, the traveler followed a narrow footpath bordered by low stones and trailing ivy. As they approached the cottages, the subtle sound of low voices drifted through the air calm, unhurried and warm. It wasn't the excited chatter of a bustling festival, but rather the collected murmur of neighbors settling into a peaceful evening together. In front of one cottage, several villagers had gathered outside on a wooden platform that overlooked the fields. They sat on woven mats arranged in a circle, each person tending a small candle before them. The tiny flames flickered softly, casting halos of amber light onto their faces. From afar, the gathering looked like a ring of fireflies resting close to the ground, glowing but gentle, almost meditative. The traveler paused at the edge of the gathering. An older woman with silver-threaded hair noticed them and offered a kind smile, nodding softly in invitation. The traveler approached quietly, careful not to disturb the serene mood, and took a place just outside the circle. This was a nightly ritual for many villagers, simple practice of winding down together after long days spent tending fields, mending tools, or caring for family. Each candle represented a small intention: gratitude for the day, hopes for tomorrow, or simply the desire for a restful night. It wasn't magical or mysterious. It was a cultural habit that encouraged calm, reflection, and connection. The air smelled of beeswax and cool nightgrass. As the candles burned steadily, their light wavered in the mild breeze, creating soft patterns that danced slowly across the faces gathered there. The villagers breathed as one slow, deep inhales followed by long, peaceful exhales. The rhythm of their breath mingled with the quiet sounds of the countryside, the distant chirp of crickets, the occasional rustle of a small animal in the underbrush, the soft groan of old wood settling. A young boy handed the traveler a candle of their own, small, sturdy, wrapped with a simple loop of twine. The traveler held it gently, feeling the tiny warmth radiating outward from the flame. The flickering light calmed the mind in ways that felt timeless, just as people in the medieval world often found grounding in fireside moments like this. Around the circle, the villagers began to share slow, comforting stories, memories of gentle rains, bountiful harvests, and quiet days spent working beside friends. Their voices blended with the night, the cadence soothing enough to lull even the restlessness out of weary hearts. The traveler closed their eyes briefly, letting the warm light of the candle seep through their lids. Even with eyes shut, it felt as though the flame continued to glow inside them, steady and reassuring. They breathed in deeply, the night air mingling with the soft scent of wax, herbs, and earth. Here, in the circle of candlelight, surrounded by calm voices and gentle warmth, the traveler felt the kind of peace that didn't demand anything, just presence, breath, and stillness. It was a reminder that in medieval life, comfort often came from simple rituals shared with others. Small acts that eased the mind, soothed the spirit, and prepared the body for deep, quiet rest. The candles swayed lightly once more, their flames bending as if nodding in agreement with the night itself. When the candle circle finally thinned and villagers began returning to their cottages one by one, the traveler stood and followed a small lane that wound gently between the homes. The night had deepened, yet it did not feel heavy. Instead, It wrapped the village in a quiet softness, like a blanket carefully laid over tired shoulders. The traveler passed beneath a wooden arch, where wild honeysuckle climbed in looping curls, its faint sweetness drifting through the air. Just beyond it, smoke rose from several chimneys in long, slow ribbons, catching the moonlight as they swayed and dissolved into the dark. The scent of hearth smoke was warm and familiar dry wood, a hint of herbs tossed into the flames, and the earthy coziness that accompanied nearly every medieval evening. The calming smoke wasn't meant to change the mind in wild or dangerous ways. Rather, villagers sometimes burned gentle herbs with their firewood simply to scent their homes, ease the air during chilly nights, or soothe an anxious mood. A sprig of rosemary, a pinch of lavender, or crushed mint leaves thrown into the embers created a fragrance that drifted through each room, settling restlessly wandering thoughts. The traveler paused before one cottage where a bundle of drying herbs hung near the door, releasing a subtle perfume as the breeze brushed through. The door stood slightly ajar, and a warm glow flickered inside. A family sat gathered near the hearth, parents, 2 children, and an elderly grandmother whose hands moved slowly as she braided strands of drying grass. Their voices were soft, the kind of steady, quiet tones that matched the rhythm of the crackling fire. Not wishing to intrude, the traveler lingered outside for a moment, simply listening. The grandmother was telling a familiar tale, one carried through generations, the story of a meadow spirit who protected late-night wanderers, guiding them home with drifting lights. The children leaned closer, wide-eyed but comforted, their faces illuminated by the orange glow of the fire. The warmth spilled out through the doorway, and with it the scent of those fragrant hearth herbs, wrapping the traveler in a soothing, earthy embrace. A sense of belonging not to this family specifically, but to the gentle slowness of the night settled over them. Continuing down the path, the traveler noticed how each home added a subtle note to the tapestry of evening scents. A loaf of bread cooling on a windowsill, woolen blankets airing over wooden beams, and faint traces of dried petals kept in small clay bowls to perfume rooms through the winter. These quiet details were the medieval world's version of comfort, simple, grounding, and deeply human. At the edge of the village, the traveler reached a low stone wall overlooking the moonlit fields. Beyond the fields, the forest rose like a velvet curtain, its treetops whispering gently as the breeze moved through. The moonlight cast a delicate sheen over everything, turning the world silver and soft. The traveler sat on the wall, letting the calm seep deeper. The smoke drifting across the valley carried with it stories of thousands of nights before this one, nights warmed by firelight, soothed by gentle scents, and softened by the presence of others, drawing together in quiet community. Here, under the watchful glow of the moon, the traveler felt the last of the day's tension ease from their body. Their breathing steadied, aligning with the peaceful rhythms around them. The distant crackle of hearth fires, the rustle of grass, the whisper of wind threading through the trees. The night was settling beautifully, wrapping the land in a deep, serene calm. The traveler rose from the stone wall and followed a narrow track, leading gently downhill toward the Millstreamer route villagers often took when they wanted a little quiet before sleep. The pathway was smooth and pale beneath the moonlight, bordered by low tufts of wild grass that shimmered like silver threads whenever the breeze passed through. The sound of running water reached the traveler long before the stream came into view. It murmured softly, like someone whispering to themselves in a language made only of currents and ripples. The closer the traveler came, the more the sound seemed to settle the night, rather than disturb it. Soft, steady, endlessly patient. At the bottom of the slope, the millstream glowed gently under the moon. Its surface reflected the sky in shimmering fragments, broken pieces of light drifting across dark water. The old wooden mill stood nearby, its wheels still for the evening, but its beams creaked softly in the night breeze as if stretching after a long day's work. The traveler approached the water's edge, where smooth stones created a natural sitting place. They settled there, feeling the coolness of the rock beneath them and listening as the stream traced slow patterns around smaller stones, gurgling and swirling in soft rhythms. The smells here were crisp and fresh: wet moss, river-cold air, and the faint scent of pine carried from the forest beyond. Medieval villagers often came to this stream in the evenings, not to seek thrill or distraction, but for a kind of peaceful clarity. The gentle motion of the water helped quiet the mind, letting the day's worries dissolve into something calmer. Many believed the stream carried away not just fallen leaves, but also tension, frustration, and fatigue, gently ushering people toward a better night's rest. The traveler dipped a hand into the water. It was chilly but soothing, like touching a cool ribbon of moonlight. Small minnows darted around their fingers, flashing briefly before disappearing into the shadows. The sensation grounded them, drawing their thoughts into the present moment. Across the stream, fireflies danced above the reeds. Their lights rose and fell in unhurried pulses, echoing the rhythm of the stream itself, bright, dim, bright again, as though the night was breathing. Further upstream, the faint sound of cloth fluttering caught the traveler's attention. A washerwoman, finishing her final task of the day, was folding linen near a low stone slab built for washing garments in warmer seasons. She wasn't scrubbing or working now, just preparing the cloth for tomorrow's sun. Her quiet movements felt like part of the landscape, following the same gentle pace as the water and air. She acknowledged the traveler with a soft nod before gathering the last of her linens into a woven basket. Her torch flickered for a moment, painting brief halos of light on the water before she disappeared up the path toward the village. Alone again with the night, the traveler leaned back on their hands, letting their gaze drift upward. The stars were brighter here, away from the warm glow of cottage windows. Constellations stretched across the sky like ancient stories stitched in shimmering thread. The world felt spacious and soothing, wide enough to hold every breath, every thought, every small hope. The traveler inhaled deeply, the cool air filling their lungs with a feeling of quiet clarity. Somewhere nearby, an owl hooted a low, gentle call that rolled across the water like a stone skipping along the surface. The traveler closed their eyes for a moment, letting the sound anchor them to the night. The mill stream whispered, the trees murmured, the stars shone. Everything moved in slow harmony. It was peaceful in a way that made the world feel safe and steady, as though the night itself had wrapped the traveler in a calm embrace. Leaving the mill stream with its soft, steady whispers, the traveler crossed a small wooden footbridge where the boards creaked gently beneath their feet. Each step echoed quietly into the night, blending with the soothing symphony of water and wind. Beyond the bridge lay a stretch of low meadow crowned by a single, ancient willow tree, whose branches trailed down like long threads of woven moonlight. The willow was beloved by the villagers. They called it the Dreamer's Rest, for its sweeping canopy offered a sheltered pocket where many came to sit, reflect, or simply breathe in the calm hush of night. Its leaves rustled in delicate waves, each sound like a soft sigh of comfort drifting across the meadow. The traveler approached the tree slowly, savoring the peaceful procession of shadows and silver gleams along the path. As they stepped beneath the willow's cascading veil of branches, the world outside grew muffled. The long leaves swayed like gentle curtains, brushing softly against the traveler's shoulders and arms. The scent under the tree was lush in green earthy soil, cool sap, and faint traces of wild mint growing at the tree's roots. Here, the air seemed different, heavier with quiet, yet weightless in spirit. It was the kind of place that invited stillness, reminding anyone who entered that it was perfectly all right to let the body settle, to let the mind unspool in slow, calm lines. Medieval folk didn't need dangerous distractions or harmful substances to find reprieve. Places like this, Willow, offered natural comfort, a sense of spaciousness that soothed troubled thoughts. The traveler lowered themselves onto a patch of soft grass beneath the tree. The blades bent gently, forming a natural cushion as cool earth rose to cradle their weight. Above, the willow branches swayed in a slow, rhythmic dance, painting the ground with moving shadows like ripples across a pond. A soft breeze drifted through, carrying the faint fragrance of crushed leaves. It brushed against the traveler's cheek, lifting strands of hair and cooling the warmth left by the many lantern-lit paths they had walked earlier. The breeze didn't rush, it wandered, as if exploring the tree's vast canopy before drifting back into the open meadow. Nearby, a pair of small birds stirred in the branches, shifting quietly as they settled deeper into sleep. Their tiny movements, soft rustles, a faint chirp blended seamlessly with the willow's whispering leaves. Everything beneath the tree moved in harmony, like a lullaby woven from the breath of the night itself. The traveler leaned back until their shoulders touched the rough, sturdy bark of the willow's great trunk. The texture was solid and reassuring, grounding them as the night around them deepened. They inhaled slowly, letting the sense of earth and dew fill their lungs, then exhaled even slower, releasing the day's remaining tension. Above, the moon peeked through openings in the branches, sending pale beams of light that dotted the grass in silvery shapes. The shifting beams created patterns that seemed to drift and swirl, as though the moonlight itself had decided to sway with the willow's rhythm. The traveler allowed their eyes to half close, watching the shimmering movements as though watching dreams begin to form. Each motion was soft and unhurried, inviting the mind to wander freely but peacefully, anchored by the steady presence of the willow's embrace. Time felt different, here round it, gentle, as though the night had stretched itself wide to provide room for quiet thoughts and deep breaths. This was the kind of calm medieval villagers treasured, a stillness untouched by worry, where the only thing to do was simply be. A distant frog croaked from somewhere near the water, the sound low and soothing. Another answered. The chorus was slow, steady, grounded. Beneath the willow, the traveler felt their hearts settle into the same gentle tempo. The night held them gently. After resting beneath the willow's graceful canopy, the traveler rose slowly, feeling refreshed by the tree's gentle hush. The meadow stretched out before them, bathed in a soft layer of moonlit mist. In the distance, a thin line of lanterns bobbed like warm fireflies along a hillside passage, flames swaying with the night breeze, guiding wanderers toward a small shrine built from smooth river stones. The traveler stepped forward, drawn by the subtle glow. The air carried the faint scent of dew settling on the grass, cool and crisp, mingling with the earthy sweetness of distant wildflowers that had not yet surrendered their fragrance to the night. Their footsteps made barely a sound. The meadow seemed to cradle each movement with gentle acceptance. As the traveler approached the lantern-lit trail, the hillside rose gradually, offering a slow ascent that allowed the landscape to unfold in serene layers. The lanterns were simple wooden frames wrapped with thin paper, each painted with soft strokes of ink flowers, stars, flowing water. The warm glow illuminated the illustrations from within, making them appear alive in the quiet dark. Villagers often walked this path at night, not for worship or ceremony, but for reflection. The small shrine at the top was a place to breathe, to release the day, to let the mind settle into the calm rhythm of night. Medieval life was full of responsibility and effort. But moments like these quiet evening walks, guided by soft lights, helped people find balance without needing anything risky or harmful. Just air, just moonlight, just the steady glow of lanterns swaying in time with their steps. As the traveler began the ascent, crickets sang from the tall grass on either side. Their song rose and fell like a gentle tide, steady and reassuring. Each lantern flickered slightly as the breeze brushed past, creating a soft dance of shadows along the path. The light seemed to lean forward, inviting the traveler onward. Halfway up the hill, the land widened into a small overlook, where a bench made of smooth stone sat facing the valley. The traveler paused there, allowing their gaze to drift across the landscape below. The village was a scatter of golden windows, each home radiating warmth into the night. Wisps of hearth smoke curled upward in faint spirals, blending with the mist that drifted lazily over the fields. The sight carried a tender quiet one that reminded the traveler how deeply connected the villagers were to their land. Their routine, their gentle nightly rituals. Even without realizing it, they had joined in these rituals too. The calming tea, the candle circle, the walk through the meadow, the stillness of the willow. Each moment was part of a peaceful cadence that belonged to everyone who sought rest at day's end. After a few breaths, the traveler continued up the path. The lanterns grew closer together now, creating a narrow tunnel of warm light that guided their steps. Shadows swayed softly beneath the traveler's feet, moving in harmony with the lanterns, as if the ground itself breathed in slow, soothing rhythms. At the top of the hill, the shrine awaited a small stone structure with a wooden roof and a simple offering bowl set before it. Not a religious icon, but a place of gratitude. Villagers left pebbles, sprigs of herbs, or small carved tokens to represent wishes, hopes, or moments from their day they wanted to release. Tonight, the bowl held just a few small offerings, each one placed with gentle intention. The traveler approached slowly and knelt beside the shrine, feeling the coolness of the stone radiating up through the night air. They picked up a smooth pebble from the ground, rounded by years of rain and stream currents. Hand held it in their palm. The pebble's simplicity brought a quiet clarity. The traveler closed their eyes, breathed deeply, and allowed the pebble to absorb the final remnants of the day's tension before placing it softly into the bowl. The moment felt pure and grounding. Above, the sky stretched wide and luminous, stars glimmering like tiny lanterns hung across the heavens. The moon rested just above the treetops, its light painting everything in soft silver. The traveler lingered, letting the hilltops' calm seep through them. The lanterns below flickered gently, marking the path home like a string of glowing breadcrumbs. Tonight felt long, peaceful, and full of quiet meaning. The traveler lingered on the hilltop for a few more breaths, their senses steeped in the calm hush of the night. When they finally stood, the lanterns along the path below looked even warmer than before, like little guardians waiting patiently to guide them back down. They began their descent slowly, each step measured and gentle. The hillside grass brushed softly against their ankles, cool with dew. As the traveler moved, tiny droplets clung to their boots and hems, catching the faint moonlight and glimmering like scattered pearls. The air was cooler here, touched by the subtle chill that often settled over medieval fields after midnight. The lanterns swayed with the breeze, creating shifting pools of gold along the path. Their warm glow contrasted beautifully with the silvery mist drifting in low, delicate waves across the meadow below. It was as though two different kinds of light gold and silver, warm and cool, were quietly weaving together to cradle the traveler in their gentle glow. Halfway down, the traveler paused again, resting a hand lightly on a wooden lantern post. From here, the entire valley unfolded in a soft tapestry. The quiet village with its glowing windows, the meadows dusted with mist, the curve of the mill stream catching moonlight in thin ribbons, it all felt like a world breathing in peace. A soft rustle came from behind a patch of tall grass. The traveler turned slowly and saw a pair of small, dark eyes peering out. A young deer stepped into view, its coat the color of warm clay, its movements slow and unafraid. It studied the traveler for a long moment before dipping its head to nibble at dew-soaked clover, utterly content in the quiet of the night. The traveler watched in silence, feeling no urge to move or speak. Encounters like this were common in medieval countryside life, moments when nature revealed itself in small, steady gestures that soothed rather than startled. The deer finished its grazing and wandered away, its small hooves making the faintest sounds as it disappeared into the tall grass. Continuing down the path, the traveler felt the night deepen around them, but never darken. The moon hung bright above, its light softened by thin, drifting clouds. The lanterns flickered as the wind whispered through them, making shadows sway like gentle dancers along the hillside. Near the bottom, the traveler stepped off the lantern path and followed a side trail lined with low wildflowers. By this hour, their petals had curled inward, holding the warmth of the previous day. The flowers emitted faint scents, floral, grassy, and earthy all at once, like a quiet reminder that even in darkness, life carried soft beauty. The traveler lowered a hand to brush the tops of the flowers. Their cool petals slid beneath their fingers, leaving behind the faintest trace of fragrance. The touch grounded them in the simplicity of the moment. As they reached the meadow's edge, the sounds of the village began to return, not loud or bustling, but soft. The distant creak of a stable door, the muffled murmur of someone settling into bed, a dog giving one last sleepy bark before curling up near its home. Everything felt slow, gentle, and familiar. The traveler breathed deeply, allowing the night's peace to settle fully around them as they stepped once more onto the soft earth leading back toward the village. The lights ahead beckoned with warmth, but the traveler did not hurry. Tonight was meant to be savored in long, calming breaths, with each step a part of the peaceful journey. The path home felt like an embrace. As the traveler stepped back into the lower meadow, the soft glow of the village lanterns swelled closer, warm and steady like little stars anchored to the earth. The mist drifted in pale ribbons across the ground, curling around fence posts and weaving through clusters of wild herbs that grew freely near the cottages. Each step carried the traveler deeper into the comforting familiarity of night-settled life. Just ahead, smoke rose in a thin, curling plume from a small stone cottage with a round wooden door and a roof of snugly layered thatch. This belonged to the hearthkeeper, an elder known throughout the village for tending a perpetual flame that had been passed down from generation to generation. The hearthkeeper watched over the communal fire during the colder months, ensuring that warmth and comfort never left the valley. The traveler approached slowly. The warm glow from the cottage windows spilled onto the path like a welcoming hand. Inside, the flicker of the fire played gently across the walls, sending calm, wavering shadows dancing over shelves lined with wooden bowls, dried herbs, and small carvings of animals and leaves. Before the traveler could knock, the hearthkeeper opened the door with a knowing smile. Her hair, long and silver, fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and her eyes carried the serene patience of someone who had tended many nights, many seasons, many quiet crossroads. "You walk softly tonight," she said in a voice as warm as embers. "Come in, rest a moment." The traveler stepped inside, feeling a wave of comforting heat wash over them. The scent of the hearth filled the air, burning wood, dried lavender lay gently over the coals. and a hint of warm bread cooling on a stone slab near the fire. The hearth-keeper gestured toward a low stool near the flames. The traveler sat, feeling the warmth seep into their legs and lungs, easing the night's chill. The fire crackled in soft, steady bursts, neither loud nor bright, simply calm, like a heartbeat made of wood and light. Medieval villagers often found peace in places like this, not through anything harsh or dangerous, but through the quiet steadiness of fire, the soft murmur of an elder's voice, and the warmth of a shared space. Heat, comfort, and gentle companionship were their ways of easing the mind at day's end. The hearth-keeper reached for a clay pot set near the embers and poured a small cup of warm, fragrant broth. It smelled of gentle herbs and root vegetables, simple and soothing. "It's for warming the spirit," she said. "A humble recipe, just things grown with patience." The traveler accepted the cup, feeling the warmth through the clay. The first sip was subtle, earthy, quietly flavorful, like the essence of the village itself. The warmth spread through their chest, loosening the last knots of the day. As they drank, the hearth-keeper began humming a low melody, an ancient lull that villagers had passed down for countless generations. The tune rose and fell like the slow breathing of the earth. The fire answered with soft pops and tiny flares of golden light. Outside, the wind brushed gently against the walls, carrying the faint scent of pine and distant meadow. Inside, the room glowed with a serenity that seemed to cradle both body and mind. The hearth-keeper placed another log onto the fire with practiced care. Sparks rose briefly before settling back into the warm core of the flames. "The night is long," she murmured, "but it can be a companion if you let it. It asks nothing but your quiet attention." The traveler leaned back slightly, letting the heat wrap around them. Their eyes softened, their shoulders loosened. The room felt like a cocoon, safe, steady, softly humming with warmth. The hearth-keeper smiled. "When you are ready," she said gently, "the night will guide you onward." For now, though, the traveler simply breath-warm, slow breaths that matched the fire's gentle rhythm. The world felt calm, held, and unhurried. The corridor leading away from the herb court narrowed into a stone passage, dimly lit by guttering candles. Their flames leaned toward the drafts that wandered through the keep, making the shadows dance in soft, unhurried patterns along the walls. As Maren stepped forward, the faint aroma of warm beeswax, lavender, and something older like parchment, long kept safe, drifted around her. The chamber she entered was small but gentle in its design, almost monastic. A round window framed the dusk outside, where the cobalt sky was deepening into night. A woven rug lay across the center of the floor, its threads faded from generations of footsteps. A wooden table held a bowl of water infused with mint and chamomile, releasing a calming coolness into the air. It wasn't a room for revelry or escape, but a place where stories whispered themselves into being, shaped by herbs and intention rather than danger or indulgence. An elderly caretaker, Sister Halwyn, sat on a low stool. Her hands were folded neatly, her posture peaceful, as if she had been waiting for Maren for years. She looked up with a gaze both kind and steady, one that seemed to reassure before words were ever spoken. "You've come to understand the old ways," she said softly. "People speak of heightened senses as if the world must be exaggerated to be felt. But here we teach something gentler, how to notice what is already present. The coolness of the air, the warmth of candlelight, the softness of your own breathing." She gestured toward a small cushion. Maren settled onto it, feeling the fabric give under her weight, grounding her. Halwyn dipped her hands into the fragrant water and let droplets fall onto a bundle of dried sweet gale. As they touched, the leaves released a mild, earthy aroma, pleasant, ancient, not overwhelming. The scent drifted through the chamber like a memory half recalled. Maren allowed herself to lean into the moment. Each inhale moved slowly, each exhale even slower. The room seemed to breathe with her. Outside, the wind brushed against the shutters in a rhythmic, soothing cadence. The candles hummed quietly, their flames steadying now that she was still. Medieval folk often misunderstood such experiences, Halwan murmured. They believed calmness itself was a kind of enchantment, something mysterious and unreachable. But truly, it is only the mind learning to rest. And sometimes, a humble herb can encourage that rest. The way a lullaby coaxes a child into sleep. Maren felt a heaviness in her shoulders melt, a sensation not of escape, but of arriving into herself, into a quieter awareness of the world. She noticed the softness beneath her knees, the crisp scent in the air, and the gentle warmth radiating from the candle wax. Nothing dramatic, nothing dangerous, just a deepening sense of presence. For a moment, she wondered how many people in this keep had sat exactly where she sat now, seeking clarity or peace, hearing the same wind brush the same stones, and she felt connected to them in a quiet, timeless way. Sister Halwan smiled, as if sensing her thoughts. Sometimes, she whispered, the most powerful journeys are the still ones, and the room, with all its softness and evening calm, seemed to agree. Maren rose from the cushions slowly, as though the quiet of the chamber still clung to her shoulders in a soft shawl of calm. When she stepped back into the corridor, the air felt cooler, touched by the breath of the approaching night. A row of lanterns had been lit along the inner ramparts, their glow forming a gentle path of honey-colored light leading upward along the curved stone walkway. She followed it at an unhurried pace. The fortress above her seemed almost to hum, subtle vibrations carried through ancient stone, shaped by centuries of footsteps. Footsteps that had walked these same arcs of wall in search of peace, understanding, or simply a moment's shelter from the world below. Tonight, the stones held that history gently, without weight, as if they wished to share only their quietness. The lanterns swayed lightly in the wind. Each glass panel caught the flicker of flame within, sending thin ribbons of gold across the path. Maren brushed her fingers along the cool stone parapet and breathed in deeply. The air tasted faintly of pine resin from the forest beyond the walls, mixed with the distant hint of wood smoke curling from the village hearths. It was the sort of evening where one could feel the world exhale after a long day. Halfway along the rampart walk, she noticed a small alcove carved into the wall. Inside hung bundles of dried herb, sage, yarrow, elderflower tied with ribbon and left to release their fragrance into the night. They swayed lightly, their silhouettes delicate against the lantern glow. This spot, she realized, was meant as a resting corner for those who patrolled the walls. A place to pause, breathe, and let their senses steady again. She stepped into the alcove and leaned against the worn stone bench there. A soft rustling sound drifted on the wind. It wasn't threatening, just the quiet movements of late birds settling into their roosts in the branches beyond the wall. The night sky above had deepened to a velvet blue, dark, but not yet black, sprinkled with the first shy stars of evening. One bright star hovered near the horizon, shimmering with a faint silver halo. The bundle of sage closest to her released a soothing, dry aroma, the kind that felt like a hand smoothing the air itself. It made her think of hearth fires after rain, of wool cloaks warmed by long travel, of quiet evenings where nothing needed to be hurried or worried over. Maren closed her eyes. She didn't drift or slip away. Nothing dramatic happened. Instead, the world seemed to gently organize itself. The coolness of the air felt crisp and grounding. The warmth of the lanterns felt protective and kind. The distant murmurs of the keep blended into a low, calming rhythm. Everything around her aligned into a soft harmony that eased the tension she hadn't realized she was carrying. Moments passed quietly. When she opened her eyes, the sky had grown darker, the lanterns brighter, and the wind gentler, as if the night itself approved of her slowing down. She stepped back onto the lantern path and continued along the curve of the wall, each footstep steady, deliberate, unhurried. Below her, the village lights flickered in friendly clusters. Above her, the stars gathered patiently. It was a world both ancient and immediate, the kind she felt honored to walk through. At the end of the lantern-lit rampart walk, Maren found a small wooden door tucked beneath an archway of ivy. Its hinges creaked softly as she pushed it open, revealing a warm glow waiting on the other side. She stepped through and into a long, serene hall where quietness seemed to have been carefully tended for generations. The Hall of Gentle Remedies was unlike any place she had visited in the keep so far. It was spacious yet comforting, its stone floors softened by thick woven runners in muted earth tones. Long wooden tables lined the walls, each neatly arranged with jars, woven baskets, and clay bowls filled with herbs and natural balms. Bundles of lavender hung from the rafters, their fragrance drifting down like a calming veil that greeted every visitor at the threshold. A fire crackled in the large hearth at the far end of the hall. Its glow cast warm ripples of light across the room, making the glass jars sparkle like captured stars. The flames burned low and steady, giving off just enough warmth to settle the air into an inviting embrace. Maren stepped forward, absorbing the soft symphony of sounds around her, the quiet pop of burning wood, the subtle rustle of dried leaves shifting in their baskets, and the faint whisper of the wind touching the high shutters. It all blended into an atmosphere so gentle, she felt her heartbeat naturally slow to match its rhythm. At one of the tables sat a young healer, her long hair braided with sprigs of rosemary. She looked up with a welcoming expression that felt as soothing as the room itself. "Good evening," she said in a calm, melodic voice. "You've come at the perfect time. The hall is quieter at night, and the herbs speak more softly then." Maren smiled and approached. On the table before the healer were bowls filled with calming plants, lemon, balm, chamomile blossoms, and finely crushed rose petals that released their fragrance even with the slightest movement. Each herb seemed chosen not for intensity, but for the way it encouraged calmness and steadiness. "These are not meant to change one's mind," the healer continued gently, stirring a bowl of dried leaves with a carved wooden spoon. "They help people pause long enough to hear their own thoughts again. In times past, people mistook peaceful clarity for something mysterious, but peace is natural, just easily forgotten." She handed Maren a small cloth bundle filled with a simple blend of herbs, tied with twine. It was warm from resting near the fire, and when Maren held it close, the fragrance rose up softly sweet, earthy, and soothing all at once. "Carry this with you," the healer said, "not as a charm, but as a reminder. Your own calm is already within you. These scents only help you notice it again." Maren tucked the bundle into her sleeve and felt its warmth linger against her arm. Across the hall, a narrow set of stairs led up to a balcony walkway draped in shadow. A gentle draught flowed down from it, stirring the hanging herbs into small, rhythmic sways. The hall felt alive in a quiet, reassuring way, like a resting heartbeat, steady and patient. For a while, Maren simply wandered through the rows of tables, touching the smooth surfaces of clay jars and inhaling the comforting scents. The longer she stayed, the more the world around her seemed to take on a soft glow, not from any magical influence, but from the simple act of moving slowly through a place built for healing. She paused near the hearth one last time, letting the warmth touch her face. Then she turned toward the stairs leading upward, ready to continue her quiet journey. The stairs ascending from the Hall of Gentle Remedies curved upward in a slow, graceful spiral. Their stones were cool beneath Merrin's feet, worn smooth by centuries of careful footsteps. Each step seemed to echo softly, not loudly or sharply, but in a quiet, steady rhythm that matched the calm she carried with her from the hall below. As she climbed, the air shifted around her. A faint breeze drifted downward from the upper landing, cool and clean, tinged with the scent of mountain moss and night air. It felt refreshing, like dipping one's hands into a clear spring after a long day. Small wall sconces illuminated the stairwell at wide intervals, their flames dim and steady, painting slow-moving shadows that swayed gently across the stone curve. No voices reached her from above or below. Only the hush of the breeze and the soft creak of her leather shoes made any sound. The quietness here didn't feel empty, it felt intentional, like this stairway was meant to prepare travelers for something peaceful, a moment suspended between one space and the next. Halfway up, she paused to rest her hand along the inner wall. The stone held a faint chill, soothing against her fingertips. There was something grounding about it, something that reminded her of all the people who had walked these same steps through different ages, seeking the same gentle sense of clarity. She imagined them, healers carrying bundles of herbs, apprentices seeking wisdom, weary villagers climbing toward the overlook to breathe the night air after a long day. Though she could not see them, the stone seemed to remember. Her cloth bundle of calming herbs, still tucked safely into her sleeve, released a soft hint of fragrance each time she moved her arm. A bit of chamomile, a touch of warm rose, the faintest trace of lemon balm. The scents intermingled with the cool mountain air drifting down from above, creating a quiet harmony that followed her with every step. As she continued upward, the stairway widened slightly. The stones grew lighter in color, touched by the moonlight spilling from the landing ahead. The breeze strengthened, but only just enough to rustle the edges of her sleeves and lift a few loose strands of her hair. Near the top, she could hear something new, not a voice or a distant shout, but the soft rustling of leaves swaying outside, carried faintly through an open window. It was a gentle sound, steady and soothing, as though the mountain trees were whispering to each other through the night. At last, she reached the landing. The doorway before her opened into a wide balcony overlooking the keep's outer grounds. She had not yet stepped out onto it, but even from here, she could feel the night welcoming her, the cool air brushing against her cheeks. The faint shimmer of moonlight reflecting off something beyond. The moment felt still, patient, as though the world was inviting her to take her time. But for now, she stood at the threshold, breathing in the quiet, feeling the peace that rose from the earth and drifted down from the sky in equal measure. The night waited gently. Merrin stepped onto the balcony with the same slow care she'd carried up the stairwell, as though the night itself was something fragile and precious. The moment her feet crossed the threshold, a cool breeze swept gently around her, wrapping her in a soft, refreshing hush. It carried the sense of damp earth, pine bark cooling after a warm day, and the distant sweetness of meadow flowers stirred awake by moonlight. The balcony stretched wide and curved slightly outward, supported by ancient stone arches that opened onto a magnificent view of the valley below. Moonlight poured over the landscape in a silvery wash, softening every edge, deepening every shadow, and turning the world into a quiet tapestry of light and dark. Merrin rested her hands on the smooth stone railing. The stone was cool in that grounding way that made her shoulders ease and her thoughts drift into a calmer shape. She leaned forward just slightly, allowing the night air to brush her cheeks, carrying with it the soft rustle of treetops gently swaying far below. The valley was alive, but not loudly. It breathed. A thin silver mist curled along the lowest fields, moving slowly, like a creature stretching after sleep. The river that wound through the valley reflected the moon like a ribbon of glass, shimmering with small ripples stirred by the night breeze. Lights from cottages scattered across the hillside flickered faintly, not bright enough to disturb the darkness, but warm enough to suggest hearths and families settling into rest. Somewhere in the forest, an owl called a single, soft note that echoed into the open air and faded just as gently as it arrived. Maren inhaled deeply. The scents that rose from the valley were pure and cool, carrying no intensity, only a natural clarity that made her mind feel lighter. She could understand why villagers climbed to this balcony when they needed a moment of peace. Nothing here pushed or pulled. Nothing here demanded anything. The world simply existed in a calm, moonlit stillness. Beside the doorway, a small bench had been carved directly into the stone wall. Maren took a seat, letting her cloak pool around her, feeling the warmth it held from the stairway below. Her elbow brushed the herd bundle tucked into her sleeve, releasing a faint trace of chamomile and rose that mingled beautifully with the freshness of the night. For a while, she let her eyes wander along the horizon. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks softened by drifting cloud. The moon hovered just above them, large and low, its glow both gentle and majestic. The sky around it shimmered with scattered stars, some bright and bold, others tiny pinpricks of pale silver that blinked softly, like sleepy lanterns hung across the heavens. As she watched, a thin stream of cloud passed slowly across the moon, diffusing its light into a hazy glow that made the entire valley appear dreamlike, neither entirely here nor elsewhere, but suspended in a quiet moment between day and night. Maren felt her breathing match the slow rhythm of the wind, in soft and steady, out, even softer. Her heartbeat settled into a peaceful cadence, as though syncing with the natural hush of the land below. This, she realized, is why so many came to spaces like this in centuries past. Not to be altered or overwhelmed, but to feel the world in its gentlest form, to allow the calmness already present in the wind, the moonlight, and the stone to steady the heart and clear the mind. A lantern hung beside the bench, its glow faint compared to the moon's, but warm and comforting nonetheless. Its flame flickered in a slow, lazy pattern, as if mirroring her own softened breathing. Maren closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the sounds and scents of the valley gather quietly around her like a blanket of peace. When she opened them again, the night seemed even softer. The valley waited, calm and patient. Maren lingered on the balcony until the night air felt like a familiar companion, its cool breath brushing gently against her hair. When she finally rose, she did so slowly, easing herself away from the stone bench, as though she was stepping out of a soft dream rather than a place. Her footsteps carried her back through the doorway and onto the landing where the stairway curled downward, but this time she did not return to the hall below. Another passage branched off the landing, dimly lit by a single lantern. Its glow was warm and steady, as if promising a gentle path ahead. Maren followed it, letting her hand trail along the wall's smooth surface, feeling the faint patterns left by ancient masons. The corridor descended in a gradual slope, leading deeper into the heart of the keep. The air began to shift again. It grew softer, warmer, and tinged with the green scent of living plants. Not sharp or strong, nothing that overwhelmed the senses, but a calm, earthy fragrance that seemed to rise from soil touched by moonlight and tended by patient hands. At the end of the corridor, a wooden door stood slightly ajar. Maren pushed it open. A soft glow greeted her. The herb gardens stretched out beneath a vast lattice roof, woven with wooden beams and climbing vines. Lanterns hung in quiet rows above. Their light filtered through leaves, so the entire space glowed in a gentle green-gold haze. The air inside was warm enough to soothe the chill from her journey across the ramparts. Paths curved throughout the garden, bordered by raised beds brimming with leaves, stems, blossoms, and moss. Everything here felt alive in the calmest Wano breeze. No bustling, just the slow, steady presence of growing things. The moment Merrin stepped inside, she felt the shift. It wasn't dramatic, more like stepping into a room where someone had been humming a lullaby long before she arrived. A sense of peace lingered in the air, an ancient quietness, shaped by the hands that had tended these herbs for generations. She walked slowly between the beds. Plush thyme leaves brushed her fingertips, soft as velvet. Rows of sage shimmered faintly under the lantern glow, their pale, dusty green leaves looking like feathers from some gentle creature. Rosemary bushes filled the corners with tall, slender stems that released their fragrance only when brushed. The scents blended into something airy and grounding, nothing intense, nothing intoxicating, just a peaceful harmony that let the mind rest. At the center of the garden was a small fountain. Its stone bowl was shallow and round, carved with spirals and leaf patterns worn smooth by time. Water trickled from a narrow spout, forming gentle ripples that glimmered under the lantern light. The sound was soft, rhythmic, steady, like listening to distant rain from beneath a warm blanket. Merrin approached it and sat on the low stone ledge. The warmth of the air wrapped around her like a cloak. The scent of the plants drifted around her in slow waves. Rosemary's clarity, sage's earthiness, thyme's soft sweetness. They didn't cloud her thoughts. They didn't alter them. Instead, they seemed to loosen the tightness in her chest, left by long nights and heavier days. Her shoulders softened. Her breath deepened. Her thoughts began to drift, not erratically, but gently, like leaves settling onto still water. Across the garden, a gardener moved quietly among the beds, adjusting a lantern, touching soil, trimming a bloom with delicate care. They noticed Merrin but did not disturb her. Instead, they offered a small, knowing nod, the kind given by someone who understands the simple comfort of peaceful spaces. And Merrin felt grateful, not for escape, but for presence, for the way the herbs, the warmth, the lantern glow, and the soft trickle of water all worked together to remind her how calmness could feel when allowed to bloom naturally. The night outside was dark and vast, but here within the garden, everything was soft, steady, and kind. A place to breathe, a place to rest, a place to simply be. The gardener moved with such unhurried grace that Merrin could scarcely hear their footsteps across the soft soil. When they finally approached the fountain where she sat, it was not with the urgency of someone arriving to teach or correct, but with the quiet presence of one who has spent many years learning how to listen to plants, to silence, and to people. Their robe was simple, earth-colored, and dusted with fine pollen. A few sprigs of thyme clung to the hem like small, leafy companions. Their face, lined with age yet softened by kindness, carried an expression that seemed to understand without needing explanation. "You've found the heart of the garden," the keeper said in a gentle, steady voice. "Most visitors walk the outer paths first, but the fountain has a way of calling those who are ready to rest." Merrin nodded, letting the soft sounds of the water guide her breath. "It feels quieter here," she murmured. The keeper smiled. "Quieter, yes, but never empty. This space holds the hum of life, just not the loud kind." They gestured toward a nearby bed, where small, pale blossoms opened like tiny lanterns. People in the old days sometimes believed these herbs created strange visions or otherworldly feelings, but truly, they simply helped weary minds slow enough to notice the world again. They crouched beside the bed and gently brushed their fingertips over the petals. The plant responded with a faint, soothing scent, softly floral, with the calm sweetness of morning dew. These blossoms aren't meant to change someone, the keeper continued. They only remind them of what was already within their own breath, their own ease, their own capacity for softness. Miran watched the petals tremble slightly beneath the keeper's touch. Lantern light gathered along their edges, making them glow faintly like stars caught in bloom. Nothing about them felt overwhelming or strange. Instead, they reminded her of quiet moments she had forgotten. Sunlight through linen curtains, warm bread shared at dusk, the gentle hush of snowfall. She shifted slightly, feeling the stone of the fountain warm beneath her palms. The keeper settled beside her, leaving a respectful space between them. When people speak of heightened sensations, they said slowly, they often imagine something wild or extraordinary. But here in the garden, we believe that clarity is the softest thing of all. It comes from stillness, from breath, and from noticing details we are usually too hurried to see. A small breeze drifted through the lattice roof, stirring the vines overhead. Leaves rustled in a soothing whisper, sending faint ripples across the fountain's surface. The keeper tilted their head, as though listening to a familiar song. "You hear that?" they asked softly. "Most people miss it. They search for something dramatic, forgetting how deeply peace can touch them." Marin closed her eyes. She could hear it now, the hush of vine leaves, the faint shift of blossoms brushing against one another, and the gentle rhythm of water trickling beside her. None of it was loud, yet it felt like the kind of harmony she had long needed without realizing it. When she opened her eyes again, the keeper was watching her with a warm expression. "The mind," they said, "is not a tower to be climbed, nor a wild field to run through. It is more like this garden. It thrives when tended with patience, quiet moments, and gentle care." Marin felt a peaceful heaviness settle through her limbs, a grounded warmth, the kind that came not from fatigue, but from finally allowing herself to be still. She rested her hands on her lap, inhaling the calm, earthy air. "I think I understand," she whispered. The keeper nodded. "Good. Then you're ready for the next part of your journey." Their words were not urgent. They held the soft certainty of someone who had guided many travelers before her. Around them, the garden continued its quiet symphony, and Marin felt steady, peaceful, present, ready to follow wherever the night would lead her next. The garden keeper rose with the same calm grace that had marked their every movement, brushing a bit of soil from their hands. They inclined their head toward a narrow path that wound deeper into the garden, partly hidden by tall clusters of soft green leaves. The path glimmered faintly beneath the lantern light, as though dusted with threads of silver. Marin stood, feeling the gentle warmth of the fountain's stone slip away from her palms. She followed the keeper toward the path, her footsteps nearly silent on the soft earth. As she crossed beneath a low arch of intertwined branches, she felt the air shift again, cooler now, with a faint tingle of evening dew settling across the leaves. "These plants," the keeper murmured, walking ahead of her, "are often misunderstood. For centuries, people believed they carried strange power, but their true gift is much simpler. They help the mind slow enough to notice the world in finer detail." She glanced at the plants lining the path. Their leaves were long and gently curled, each one coated in a delicate sheen of moisture. When the lantern light touched them, the droplets shimmered like small stars resting on the surface. Marin brushed her fingers lightly against a leaf. It was cool, almost cold, but soothing, like touching the surface of a calm lake before sunrise. The droplet she disturbed rolled slowly down the leaf's curve, catching light in a tiny golden flash before disappearing into the soil. The scent along this part of the path was different from the rest of the garden, not strong, but crisp and clear, like the breath of mountains after a rain. Each inhale made her mind feel tidier somehow, as if loose threads of thought were quietly falling into place. The keeper paused near a cluster of particularly tall plants, whose leaves swayed ever so slightly, though the air was still. "This one is called moonleaf," they said softly, "not because it alters the mind, as some believed, but because it reflects moonlight so gently that people once thought it held a piece of the night within it." They guided Maren closer. The leaves truly did seem to glow very faintly, just enough to blur their edges in the dimness. When Maren stepped beside them, the world around her seemed to soften, not in a dizzying way, but like a room falling quiet after a long day. Her thoughts slowed, settling deeper into the present moment. "We often rush so quickly through life," the keeper continued, "that even peaceful moments pass us by. But when we walk slowly, when we breathe with intention, our senses open naturally. These plants simply remind us to do what we are already capable of." The truth of those words settled through her like warm tea flowing from her chest outward. They walked further down the path. A low mist drifted in from the far side of the garden, brushing against the leaves and turning each droplet into a tiny sphere of shining silver. The mist curled around Maren's ankles, cool and soft, inviting her to move even more slowly. Each step felt deliberate, grounded, connected to the earth beneath. At one point, the path widened into a small clearing. A wooden bench rested beneath an overhanging branch of moonleaf. Its surface was smooth from years of visitors seeking a moment of quiet here. The keeper gestured for Maren to sit. As she eased herself down, she felt the wooden surface warm beneath her, as though it had been resting in gentle lantern light for hours. The mist brushed past her in slow waves. The leaves above her swayed slightly, scattering small droplets that fell in soft, cooling taps onto the ground. The keeper remained standing, their presence steady and reassuring. In the old times, they said, people mistook tranquility for enchantment. But calmness like this, they swept a slow hand across the garden, comes from within. The plants merely make space for it. Maren closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sounds and scents gather gently around her. The soft drip of dew, the distant trickle of the fountain, the rustle of moonleaf in the lantern glow. Everything blended into a peaceful harmony that touched her mind like a quiet hand resting on her shoulder. She felt centered, present, deeply calm. When she opened her eyes again, the keeper smiled. "Good," they whispered. "The night is guiding you well." The wind had finally settled into a low hush, as if the entire valley were holding its breath. Above the frozen pines, the moon had climbed higher, cold, silver, and impossibly sharp around its edges. It cast a glow strong enough to make the snow shimmer like crushed glass. Rourke brushed the frost from his beard and pointed toward the ridge. "Do you see that?" he muttered. At first it looked like nothing, just another ripple of shadow across the snow. But then the outline brightened. One lantern, then another, and another. A line of pale golds flickered to life, each one spaced evenly, stretching far across the mountainside like a trail of fireflies frozen mid-flight. The lantern pathway. Alira felt her pulse quicken. "It wasn't here before," she whispered. "Exactly," Rourke replied. "It appears only when the mountain decides you're ready." The group stepped closer. The air around the lanterns felt warmer, not cozy, but ancient, like stepping into breath left behind by something vast. Each lantern's flame danced without consuming its wick, glowing with an oddly blue-white core. Kes crouched beside one. "Magic," he said. "Old magic." "No," Rourke corrected softly. "Older." The pathway twisted upward, toward a narrow break in the cliff wall. At the end of that glowing trail, Alira spotted something faint, an arch, or maybe a gate, carved from the stone itself, half buried in ice but unmistakably deliberate. "We follow it," she said. But the moment she took her first step onto the pathway, the lantern flame surged higher, just for a heartbeat, as though acknowledging her, or warning her. Behind them, the ordinary world fell quiet. Ahead of them, the mountain waited, illuminated by lights no human hand had crafted, and the first hint of something moving, slow, rhythmic, echoing faintly from behind the stone gates, sent a ripple of cold through the group. They continued forward. The pathway did not dim. It only grew brighter. As the group climbed higher along the lantern pathway, the flames shifted color from soft gold to a pale icy blue that cast tall, wavering shadows across the cliff face. Each step seemed to echo louder than it should, as though the mountain itself was listening. The archway grew clearer the closer they approached. What Alira had first thought was simple stone now revealed itself as something far more intricate. Carvings, hundreds of them, spiraled across the surface like frozen vines. They weren't random patterns. They were symbols, ancient ones. Some curved like ripples in water, others jagged like lightning bolts, caught mid-strike. Rourke stopped a few paces away. "No one touches it," he warned. Kess lifted an eyebrow. "Why? You think it'll bite?" "It doesn't bite," Rourke said. "It judges." A faint hum vibrated through the air, so low that at first Alira mistook it for the wind. But the mountain was silent. The sound was coming from the gate. Alira stepped forward, stopping just at the edge of the threshold. The hum deepened, almost like a breath being drawn on the other side. "It's responding to you," whispered Mara, tightening her cloak. That was when they noticed it. The carvings were shifting, not carving themselves anew. Nothing so dramatic, but faintly adjusting, realigning their spirals and angles as though turning to face her. Symbols glowing softly, reacting not just to presence, but to intention. Alira lifted a hand, not touching the stone, simply raising it into the cold air. The hum steadied. The symbols brightened. "It knows who she is," Mara murmured. "Or thinks it does," Rourke said. Before any of them could say more, the mountain rumbled, quiet, distant, but unmistakable. Snow shook loose from the ridge above. The lantern flames bent inward, all leaning toward the gate, pulled by some unseen force. Kess stepped back. "Okay, that's new." A sound rolled from beyond the archway's low, heavy, metallic, like a giant lock turning for the first time in centuries. Alira swallowed hard. "It's opening," she whispered, and as the last symbol lit up with a clear, cold glow, the stone gate began to shift. Not outward, not inward, but apart, splitting down the middle like two hands, gently parting a curtain. The darkness beyond was not empty. It moved. The darkness behind the parted gate wasn't the cold, empty void they expected. It shifted gently, expanding and contracting in a slow rhythm, almost like the steady breath of some ancient sleeping creature. A faint mist drifted outward, curling at their feet, warmer than the mountain air, and carrying a scent they couldn't quite place. Not sharp, not sweet, just calming, familiar in the way a distant memory feels familiar, even when you can't trace its origin. Alira felt it wash over her, the warmth settling across her shoulders like a soft shawl. Her heartbeat, which had been skittering anxiously, slowed. Rourke noticed it first. "Don't inhale too deeply," he murmured, gently placing a hand on her elbow. "The mountain uses scents to steady travelers. It's harmless, but it can make you too relaxed if you're nervous." Kess stepped forward, nose wrinkling. "So it's like the mountain is trying to calm us down." "Guide you," Mara corrected. "Ease the mind. Make you ready to see what's inside." The blue lantern flames at their backs flickered twice, almost like a farewell, and then held steady. Ahead, the breathing darkness thinned, revealing the beginning of a narrow passageway carved directly into the mountain. Its walls were smooth, polished by time, etched with spiraling shapes that glimmered faintly like moonlit water. The air inside carried no cold at all. Instead, it felt warm, deep, ancient, like a hearth that had burned for centuries. As they stepped past the threshold, the humming faded, replaced by a soft, low pulse that seemed to resonate beneath the stone floor. Every step they took made the gentle thrum vibrate up through their boots, like the mountain was guiding the rhythm of their movement. "This place," Elira breathed. "It's alive." Rourke nodded. "Some say the mountain is older than any kingdom, older than any name given to it. Those who walk through these halls aren't just entering stone, they're entering memory." The spiral patterns on the walls began to glow more brightly as they continued forward, illuminating the path in shifting hues of soft gold, pale lavender, deep ocean blue, each color warming the air around them. Mara brushed her fingertips lightly along the nearest carved curve, just hovering above it without touching. "It's reacting again." "To her, to her presence," Rourke said quietly. "To her purpose." Elira's breath caught not from fear, but from an overwhelming sense of being recognized, welcomed. The warmth in the air thickened slightly, like a gentle embrace around her shoulders. The passage curved left, then right, narrowing briefly before opening into a small chamber lit from above by a natural fissure. A thin beam of silver light streamed down like a quiet spotlight, illuminating a raised stone platform at the center. Something rested atop it, something shaped, wrapped, and waiting. Elira stepped closer, heartbeat slow, steady, guided by the mountain's gentle presence. Whatever lay ahead was calling to her. The chamber felt impossibly quiet, so still that even the soft hum of the passage behind them seemed to fall away. The air was warmer here, almost comforting, like stepping into a sunlit room after wandering through shadows. The thin silver beam from the fissure above illuminated the center of the space, where the stone platform waited. On top of it lay an object wrapped in layered linen, the fabric pale with age, yet perfectly preserved. The cloth edges fluttered ever so slightly, though there was no breeze in the chamber. It was as if the relic beneath the wrappings breathed, very faintly, in harmony with the mountain itself. Elira approached slowly, her steps soft against the smooth floor. Something deep inside her, quiet and instinctive, urged her forward, not with urgency, but with a calm, steady pull. Rourke, standing a few paces behind, exhaled a long, thoughtful breath. "You're meant to see it," he murmured. His voice wasn't commanding, it was simply true. Mara watched the wrappings with a narrowed, curious gaze. "There's no dust," she whispered. "No decay. This thing has been waiting." Kes shifted his weight, hands in his pockets, looking as though even he felt the reverent hush of the moment. "Waiting for what, exactly?" he asked softly. "For her," Mara replied. Elira reached the platform. Her fingertips hovered above the linen, close enough to feel its warmth. Ia's warmth, not from her imagination. The cloth carried a gentle heat, like something alive radiated beneath it. The spirals etched into the walls brightened, one by one, in a soft, wave-like ripple that circled the room. Each glow matched the quiet rhythm of Elira's breath. The mountain was listening, watching, preparing. She drew in a steady, calming inhale, as Rourke had taught her earlier. The air in the chamber felt unusually smooth, almost silky, easing her nerves like a warm cup held between cold hands. As she placed both palms lightly on the linen, the warmth deepened, not hot, never overwhelming, but comforting, soothing, almost like the familiar heat of a shared hearth on a winter evening. The fabric responded, very slowly, very gently. It loosened under her touch, unwinding itself in soft, quiet folds. Kes leaned forward, whispering, "It's moving on its own." "No," Mara said, her tone calm and certain. "It's responding, like everything else here." Layer by layer, the linen unfurled with delicate grace, revealing a soft glow beneath it, muted at first, then brightening like dawn light through fog. Alira's breath caught, not in fear, but awe. The last layer fell away, and the chamber seemed to exhale with her, a long, ancient sigh echoing faintly through the stone. There, resting upon the platform, was an object unlike any she had ever seen, luminous, shaped as though carved by water rather than hands. Its glow flickered softly, matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. The relic was awake, and it knew her. The relic's glow pulsed softly, a gentle rise and fall like the flicker of a sheltered candle. The light wasn't bright enough to sting the eyes. It was warm, muted, soothing, as though wrapped in its own calm breath. Alira felt a subtle vibration through the platform beneath her palms, a hum that traveled slowly up her arms and settled behind her ribs, aligning her heartbeat with its rhythm. The others kept a respectful distance, as if instinctively sensing that this moment belonged to her. Even Kes, usually restless, stood unusually still, his posture softened by the comforting warmth filling the chamber. "What is it?" he whispered. Rourke's voice came low, steady. "They called it the Heartstone in the oldest texts. Not a weapon, not something meant for danger or thrill." He stepped closer, arms folded gently behind him. "It was created to help travelers quiet their minds, to calm wandering spirits, to bring clarity in the days before heavy burdens and long journeys." Mara nodded slowly, eyes tracing the luminous curves of the object. "It was never meant to harm," she added, "only to soothe, to settle thoughts, the way quiet waters settle after a storm." Alira let her hand glide closer to the relic without yet touching it directly. As her fingers entered its faint halo of warmth, the glow deepened, swirling into subtle patterns, soft curling shapes like drifting smoke or gentle eddies of wind. The movement was hypnotic, slow and deliberate, inviting her to breathe in time with it. The mountain around them seemed to approve. The spirals on the walls dimmed to a soft twilight hue, creating a cocoon-like atmosphere that made every breath feel deeper, calmer, steadier. "It feels," Alira whispered, searching for the right word. "Peaceful." Rourke nodded. "It's meant to. In the old days, pilgrims would rest with it before crossing the higher passes. Not to escape their troubles, never that, but to gather themselves, to find balance." The warmth expanded gently outward, brushing Alira's cheeks like the faintest touch of a hearth's glow. Her eyelids grew heavy, not in exhaustion, but in relief. Every breath felt smoother, more grounded. Mara stepped forward just enough to meet her eyes. "If it comforts you, listen, but don't let it pull too deeply. These mountains teach balance, not surrender." Alira nodded. She understood. This was not meant to make her feel lost, it was meant to help her feel found. She leaned in just slightly, allowing herself to enter fully into the warmth's soft embrace. Within the glow, tiny motes of light drifted lazily, weaving patterns that seemed to tell stories too old for speech, stories of wanderers, climbers, dreamers who had once stood here seeking steadiness before the world ahead changed them. For a moment, Alira felt herself sinking gently into that quiet, shared memory. Not trapped, not carried away, just held, cradled in calm. Rourke's voice reached her softly. "When you're ready, it will show you why it called." Alira exhaled, long and steady. The Heartstone brightened in response. as if recognizing her breath, her presence, her readiness. Something inside it shifted, a soft turning of light within light. The relic was preparing to reveal its purpose. The chamber seemed to hush itself even further, as though the stone walls knew the Heartstone was preparing to speak, not with words, but with presence. Elira watched as the glow within the relic deepened, shifting from steady warmth into soft waves of light that rippled gently across its surface. Each wave shimmered like the reflection of moonlight over still water. She drew a slow breath, feeling the warmth flow over her again, this time settling in her shoulders, her chest, the space just behind her thoughts. It wasn't overwhelming, never. It was like the gentle feeling of settling under a thick blanket on a winter evening, the moment when the world grows quiet and the mind drifts into clarity. Rourke's voice broke the silence in a calm, steady murmur. Let it show you the path, Elira. Not a vision, not a command, just a memory the mountain offers to those who seek steadiness. Mara stepped closer, her expression soft. It doesn't show the future, she added, only echoes of others who found peace here, like lanterns left behind to guide you. Elira nodded faintly, her gaze fixed on the swirling light. The motes within the Heartstone began moving more purposefully, weaving together into faint shapes, not sharp, not detailed, but soft impressions, silhouettes drifting through mist, outlines of travelers walking mountain paths, their cloaks fluttering gently in unseen wind. Some rested beneath ancient pines, others stood at cliff edges, gazing at horizons bathed in dawn. None was suffering, none were lost. Each one radiated a quiet courage, a steady heart. Elira felt their calm settle into her like snowflakes melting on warm skin. Kesu had been unusually quiet, exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. It's strange, he murmured. I don't feel scared of it. I thought something this old would feel heavy, but it doesn't. That's because it isn't here to test you, Mara replied. It's here to help you notice your own strength. The Heartstone brightened for a moment, a soft pulse that made the chamber glow like warm twilight. Elira closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her eyelids, the gentle silhouettes continued drifting pilgrims who had once stood in this same chamber, breathing the same mountain air. They weren't speaking to her, not directly, but their presence carried a quiet reassurance, a reminder that countless others had stood at turning points, uncertain, hopeful, seeking clarity, and they had found it. Elira's breath deepened. Each inhale synced perfectly with the relic's slow rhythm. She felt rooted, centered, softened without losing her strength. When she opened her eyes again, the glow settled into a soft, steady shimmer, no longer swirling, no longer shifting. The Heartstone had shown what it needed to show, but something else had changed. A faint line of light, thin as a thread of silk, now extended from the relic toward the far side of the chamber, fading into a narrow seam in the stone wall. A hidden path. Rourke's brows lifted slightly. Well, he murmured, it appears the mountain thinks you're ready to continue. Elira felt a gentle steadiness settle in her chest, as if the relic's warmth had woven itself into her breath. She was ready. The thin line of light stretched from the Heartstone to the far wall like a single silver thread, shimmering faintly as though spun from moonlight. It didn't flicker or waver, it simply was, steady and deliberate, guiding their attention toward the narrow seam carved almost invisibly into the stone. Elira lifted her head, watching the thread glow with a quiet certainty. It didn't demand, it didn't pull. It simply invited. Rourke stepped to her side, his voice low, respectful of the chamber's hush. This passage doesn't appear unless the mountain believes you're grounded enough to walk it. It's not a path for haste or fear. Mara nodded thoughtfully, studying the seam with narrowed eyes. Most travelers never see it. Only those who've found enough calm to listen to the mountain's softer guidance. Kes let out a soft whistle. So we found some kind of secret hallway unlocked by. Not panicking. He shrugged lightly. Honestly, that's pretty impressive for us. Elira offered him a faint, appreciative smile, but her focus remained on the silver thread. The warmth from the heartstone still rested inside her, gentle and steady. It felt like the quiet confidence that comes after a deep breath, subtle but real. She approached the wall slowly. As she neared, the spirals carved into the stone brightened one by one, radiating outward like ripples. The seam shimmered slightly, then softened, as though the rock itself relaxed. With a quiet sigh, almost like a breath being released, the stone split open. Not abruptly, not loudly, just a long, smooth parting, as though the mountain had been waiting for this moment and wanted it to be peaceful. Behind the newly revealed doorway lay a passage bathed in muted gold light. The air drifting out was warmer still, carrying a quiet scent reminiscent of sun-warmed grains and gently dried herbs. It smelled like rest, like the moment after a long day when everything finally settles. Elira stepped back slightly, letting the others see. Kes peered inside, eyes widening. Didn't expect it to feel so cozy. It won't stay that way if we bring anxiety into it. Mara cautioned softly. Let's follow Elira's lead. She's the one the mountain is responding to. Rourke nodded. Stay close, stay calm. Elira felt no fear, only a quiet readiness. The heartstone's gentle impression lingered beneath her sternum like a warm ember, steady and reassuring. She took a slow, grounding breath, letting the air fill her lungs and settle her thoughts. Then she stepped through the doorway. The golden light moved with her, soft and welcoming, brushing her shoulders like warm breeze. The floor beneath her boots felt smoother than before, shaped by countless quiet footsteps over generations. The chamber behind them dimmed as the doorway slowly closed. But Elira didn't look back. She could feel the mountain's guidance ahead, soft, encouraging, unhurried. Whatever waited in the golden passage was part of the path now, part of the serenity the mountain wanted to reveal, and she was ready to walk it. The golden passageway enveloped them in a warm, muted gloss, enough not to strain the eyes, bright enough to guide each careful step. The air felt different here, almost velvety, as though the mountain itself had wrapped the corridor in a quiet hush. Every breath came easier, drawn in like warm tea sipped on a cool evening. Elira walked at the front, her steps slow and steady. The warmth in her chest left by the heartstone seemed to pulse gently, as if checking in with her, reminding her she wasn't alone on this path. Each inhale seemed to harmonize with the glow around her, syncing her breath with the quiet rhythm of the mountain. Rourke followed closely behind, his posture relaxed but attentive. "This hall is known only in legend," he murmured, his voice respectful of the hush. "Some call it the Hall of Gentle Echoes, a place where the mountain reflects back the calm you carry." Mara brushed her fingers lightly along the walnut, touching, simply hovering, as she always did when she sensed ancient workings around her. "It doesn't mirror your thoughts," she said softly, "only your stillness." Kes let out a quiet breath, unusually subdued. "So if you're calm, the hall stays calm." Rourke nodded. "And if you're not, it encourages you to return to calm. Gently, always." Elira felt the truth of that. The corridor didn't press down or demand steadiness. It simply offered it, like a friend handing you a warm blanket without a word. As they continued forward, the passage widened subtly into a long, low hall. The ceiling arched high above them, carved with flowing patterns that resembled drifting clouds or waves moving across sand. The golden light deepened to a soft amber, bathing the room in a comforting dusk-like glow. Then Illyra heard it, a soft sound, barely audible at first, echoing faintly through the hall. Not a voice, not music, something gentler, a breath, deep and slow, a calm exhale rising to meet them, as though the hall itself was quietly matching their pace, reminding them to keep their steps measured and their hearts steady. Kes blinked. "Is that us breathing back at us?" Mara shook her head slightly. "Not exactly. This place amplifies peace. It's reflecting the Heartstone's calm through her." Her gaze drifted to Illyra. "It's responding to your steadiness." Illyra exhaled softly, and the hall seemed to exhale with her, just a faint echo, a gentle reassurance traveling through the air and returning to her like a small, warm wave. The sound was soothing, almost lulling. With every step deeper into the hall, her worries seemed to soften at the edges, not disappear, simply lose their sharpness, becoming easier to hold. Rourke nodded approvingly. "Good. Don't resist its calm. Let it walk with you." Illyra moved forward, and the amber light glided along the walls as if drawn to her. The echoes grew more rhythmic, matching the cadence of her breath. It felt like walking beside a peaceful tide, steady, welcoming, patient. At the far end of the hall stood another doorway, arched, adorned with soft curling patterns that resembled wind over tall grass, and just beyond it glowed a deeper light, cooler in tone, like the first glimmer of morning before sunrise. Mara inhaled slowly. "That next chamber, that is where the mountain begins to show meaning." Illyra felt the warmth in her chest brighten in response, steady and sure. She was ready to step through. The doorway at the end of the hall of gentle echoes stood slightly ajar, as though it had sensed their approach long before they arrived. Its patterned soft curves that mimicked wind-swept grass glimmered faintly with a pale bluish shimmer. The light behind it was unlike the golden warmth they had just left. It was cooler, quieter, like starlight drifting across a calm lake. Illyra paused for a moment before stepping through. Not from hesitation, she felt none, but from a soft, instinctive reverence. The hall had soothed them, quieted breath and thought alike, preparing them for whatever lay ahead. She could feel it now, the warmth of the Heartstone in her chest meeting this new cool glow, the two sensations balancing each other, like sunrise meeting night. When she finally stepped past the threshold, the others followed in slow, respectful silence. The chamber beyond opened wide, round as a great hollowed shell. Its walls were smooth, flowing upward into a high dome carved with delicate grooves that captured the soft blue light and scattered it in faint, shimmering patterns across the floor. It felt like standing inside the first quiet hour of dawn. A gentle breeze stirred unexpected, yet soft enough to feel more imagined than real. It brushed across Illyra's face, carrying the faint scent of distant rain and clean stone. Kes looked around, rubbing his arms slightly. "It feels cool, but not cold. More like standing outside right before the sun rises." Mara nodded. "This is the Chamber of First Light. It's said to help travelers see what they carry inside, not their fears, not their burdens, just the quiet truths beneath them." Rourke's voice was barely above a whisper. "This is where the mountain begins to speak." In the center of the chamber sat a low platform of pale stone, different from the one that held the Heartstone. This one was smooth, unadorned, almost humble-like, a place meant for resting one's thoughts rather than holding relics. A thin column of the cool bluish light descended upon it from a slit in the dome above, falling in a straight, gentle beam. Illyra approached slowly. With each step she took, the bluish glow deepened around her, brightening ever so slightly in response, embracing, not overwhelming. The chamber seemed to breathe with her again, an echo just soft enough to soothe every inhale. Rourke stopped a few paces back. "You don't need to do anything," he said softly. "Just stand within the light. Let it greet you." "Greet me," Alira murmured. Mara smiled gently. "The mountain acknowledges calm. It welcomes those who come in peace. You've shown it your steadiness. Now it shows you its own." Alira stepped onto the platform. The moment she entered the column of light, the chamber shifted not in shape, but in feeling. A gentle warmth rose from the floor beneath her feet, mingling with the cool glow descending from above. It wrapped around her like a soft current, neither heavy nor light, simply present, balanced. The air grew still. Her breath deepened without effort. And then, from somewhere above perhaps, from the grooves in the dome, perhaps from the mountain's heart itself, a faint sound drifted downward, a low hum, calm, steady, like the beginning of a song sung for centuries to soothe weary travelers. Alira closed her eyes. The hum resonated through her, warm and cool at once, smoothing thoughts she hadn't even realized were fluttering. It felt like a hand gently placed over the heart, easing tension without erasing it. Kes exhaled slowly. "That sound, it makes me feel like I've just sat down after a long day." Mara nodded, eyes half closed. "It's meant to." Rourke rested a hand against the stone wall. "Reverent, the mountain is showing her its calm, showing her the steadiness she already carries." Alira felt that truth settle inside her, soft and sure. She wasn't being changed. She was being shown the quiet strength she already had. The chamber glowed brighter for a moment, then steadied into a gentle dawn-like hue. Something was awakening ahead, something quiet, guiding, patient, and the mountain was ready to show her the next step. The chamber's soft hum deepened, blooming gently through the air like a warm, resonant chord. It wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. The sound carried with it a sense of age, of patience, of something that had waited a very long time to be heard. Alira stood within the ribbon of bluish light, her eyes half closed as the vibrations settled into her like a heartbeat beneath a heartbeat. The cool glow from above and the warm current from below met in the center of her chest, creating a delicate balance that felt like standing in the middle of two seasons at once, winter's stillness and early spring's soft promise. Mara stepped closer to the platform, though she kept a respectful distance from the beam. "It's synchronizing with you," she murmured, "not to change you, only to steady the rhythm you brought with you." Kes looked around at the dome, his voice hushed. "Feels like the whole place is breathing with her." Rourke nodded. "That's because it is. This chamber is alive in its own way, not like a creature, not like a spirit, just the mountain's memory echoing through stone." The grooves etched into the high dome began to glow, not all at once, but in a slow, drifting cascade like stars appearing one by one in a deep twilight sky. The glow rippled outward, turning the chamber into a gentle night above and a soft dawn below. Alira lifted her head, feeling the shift before she saw it. The hum changed just slightly, forming a faint rhythmic pulse that seemed to rise from the walls themselves. Each pulse was subtle, a soft wave that brushed against her senses like a warm tide moving in and out. A memory stirred within her, not a scene, not an image, but a feeling. The first time she had climbed a hill at dawn as a child. The quiet moment before speaking a truth she had held for years. The steadiness she felt the day she realized she was stronger than she'd known. These weren't visions. They were simply echoes of calm she had lived before, rising gently to the surface. Mara breathed out in awe. "The chamber is helping you remember your own peace." Rourke stepped forward, his expression warm. "Alira, listen closely. The pulse you feel now. That is the mountain's quiet way of showing you that the calm you found wasn't given to you. It was already yours. The mountain is only reflecting it." Alira opened her eyes slowly. The glow around the chamber responded, brightening just enough to illuminate the smooth stone floor beneath her feet. The air felt lighter now, as though the mountain had acknowledged her presence fully and was offering the next step with gentle confidence. Kes tilted his head toward the far wall. Is it just me, or is that opening over there getting brighter? Indeed, on the opposite side of the chamber, another archway was slowly emerging from the stone, its outline traced in the same soft, bluish light as the beam she stood within. The patterns on it resembled ripples extending across a calm pond, a new path, not forced, not urgent, simply ready. Alira stepped back from the center, and the moment she left the beam, the light softened into a calm glow, if bidding her farewell, not closure. Mara watched thoughtfully. "You didn't take anything from this place," she said gently. "You simply uncovered something quiet and steady inside yourself." Rourke nodded. "And now the mountain invites you onward." Alira felt no pressure, no weight, only a warm, quiet certainty blooming beneath her ribs. The Heartstone's earlier warmth lingered, now woven seamlessly with the chamber's cool guidance. She turned toward the newly revealed doorway. Its faint glow shimmered with the softness of early morning, balanced, welcoming, patient. "Let's go," she whispered, and the mountain, in its quiet way, seemed to whisper back. The attic above the archive of cold hours was supposed to be empty. That's what every record said. That's what every caretaker insisted.